Well, it's good to be with you, and this is a session on preparing teams for short-term missions, so hopefully you're in the right place if that's what you were interested in. So Paul and I will be sharing this session with you, splitting the time, and I don't have any handouts for you, but as we're going through the presentation, some slides, if there are particular thoughts that strike you as being important or significant, I just encourage you to jot those down. And I believe Paul and I will also be available in a roundtable discussion for the second breakout session if there's any further discussion that you want to continue with. So here we go. I'd like to begin with a riddle. And if you know the answer to this riddle, I'd encourage you to keep quiet in about 15-20 minutes as we finish up. And I turn things over to Paul, we'll get to the answer of it. What always stays in a corner, yet travels around the world? So if you happen to lose interest in what I'm saying, at least you'll have something to think about for the next 15 or 20 minutes. So let's begin in earnest. I like to frame a discussion of short-term missions with a couple of scriptures, and certainly the Bible would have plenty to choose from. It as we think about the early church, our thoughts often go to the Apostle Paul as a good example of a missionary in the first century. And in 1 Thessalonians, Paul has done church planting there and has returned, and Timothy has been left behind to do some follow-up ministry. And this is what Paul says: "We loved you so much," speaking of the Thessalonians, "that we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well, because you've become so dear to us." And it's interesting to think about this in light of how much time Paul had probably been able to spend with that church, or we might think the lack of time. In a resource by Mack and Leanne Stiles, they write, "Remember that Paul's longing and love for the Thessalonians formed after only weeks with this new church. He fills his letters with his love and affection for people he has spent time with on his mission trip, time measured in months or even weeks." As Dr. Bryan was talking about, ministry is relationship, building relationships. And we certainly think, well, wow, if I'm only there for a weekend or a week or a couple of weeks, what kind of relationships can form out of that? And that certainly is a significant issue when we think about short-term missions. And yet, what we've seen is by the continued involvement of mission teams with a particular people and location that those relationships can form. And I think also the message here that we have from Paul is that even in a short period of time, there can be a significance in the level of relationship that can form. Later in the same letter, Paul goes on to say, "But Timothy has just now come to us from you and has brought good news about your faith and love. He has told us that you always have pleasant memories of us and that you long to see us just as we long to see you." As Dr. Betty Sue Brewster from Fuller was always fond of saying, that as missionaries, our task is not only to bring good news, but to be good news. And I think some of that is captured here. I'm wondering, what kind of pleasant memories are we forming, both as we send out teams and then to the people that we're going? Well, I'm going to speak specifically about this issue of training as a particular aspect of preparation for missionary service, short-term missionary service. And if we think about this, what is so important about training? If you've been watching your TV, especially last night, I'd say that you probably don't need to turn any further than Channel 4, NBC, and its networks to have a suggested answer to that. The Sochi Olympics opened last night officially, if you got a chance to watch it. These might be representative of some of the events that are being offered. You could see maybe some that you're interested in. I know during the long 3-hour opening ceremonies, I had the newspaper open, was highlighting during the commercials the different events that I was interested in watching over the next 2 weeks. Now I'll not be available at 2 o'clock in the morning necessarily watch some of them, but so you would think about the different winter events. You probably will not see these guys competing. That would have been from the last Olympics. definitely not, we'll not find these guys gratefully at the Winter Olympics either. But these fellows you would. Actually, you'd have to go back to 1980. Just as an aside, if you've gotten a chance to see the movie Miracle, Miracle on Ice, of the 1980s Olympic hockey team. So as we know, every Olympic athlete competes for the opportunity to have a medal placed around their neck. But we also know that these athletes spend years, if not a lifetime, preparing and training for just those moments to be in a position to compete for a medal. I'd like to say that training is what makes their participation a possibility. Let me say that again. Training is what makes participation a possibility. You know, we couldn't imagine the Olympics any other way. We know that these athletes, they're at the top of their game. They've been spending years preparing for that moment. And my encouragement to us is, why not think about the same with regard to missions? That our training for missions creates the possibility for us to participate in missions. So why is training important? Well, we certainly don't want to end up like Roy here. I don't know if you can read that, but on the right he says, inadvertently Roy dooms the entire earth to annihilation when, in an attempt to be friendly, he seizes their leader by the head and shakes vigorously. Well, moving on, one framework that I found particularly helpful is to think of missions in three movements. As that slide loads, it begins here on the far left. Let's see if I have a pointer. The P is going to stand for preparation. And what I found, what we've discovered here at Trinity, is that preparation is more helpfully broken into two subsets of orientation and training. So that's what the O and T. And together those would constitute what we call preparation. I'll go into a little bit more detail, the distinction between those two. And then E is for the experience, that is the actual mission trip, the weekend or a couple weeks that you're spending in the host culture. And then finally here on the far right, I would stand for integration. So three movements of mission. We have preparation, composed of orientation, training, the mission experience itself, and then finally integration of that experience. Yes? Uh-huh.
What do you mean by integration of those?
Good. So the question is, what does integration mean? And I'll try to answer that next. So first, looking at preparation. By orientation, then, we're talking about the idea of a site-specific focus on details of the trip. We might call this preparing for the trip, whereas we could say training is more preparing the person. Okay, so preparing the trip would be more orientation. Preparing the person would be training. So in contrast, your training is going to have a broader cultural base, building up team building and so forth. Then we move to the trip and experiences. This is what we often think about as we're looking at short-term missions, focusing on the ministry, the mission experience itself. And then we get to integration. And these are just a couple of aspects that I've highlighted there. Reflecting on the experience, focusing on integration of the trip into your life once you've returned back. And I also say that would include ongoing relationship with the ministry partners where we are ministering to. And then reporting, one aspect there, encouraging the local church that has sent you out. I can just use that analogy again of the Olympics to help distinguish, especially between orientation and training. If you think about the games that are now going on in Sochi, Russia, we would say that, for example, the athletes coming from the U.S., they would have had to go through orientation. That is, they would have to know what their typical day might look like, arrange for all their flights and their housing, any immunization they would need, visas. That would all be preparing for their time being there. But the training that they would have had to undergo would be specific to their sport. So that's been ongoing for a number of years in many cases. What we found here at Trinity is that early on, when we were starting about 10 years ago to do preparation for teams, is that we would merge these two together in the same meeting time. Well, you can kind of guess which thing would take the priority, at least in the trainees' minds. They want to know about, well, when is our plane leaving? What is our typical day going to be there? And we found that the logistic aspect of orientation just sort of become the sponge to take up all the time, and that the training kind of got pushed to the side. So pretty early on, after a couple goes of this, we decided to separate that out. And at least the model that we use at Trinity is we have separate orientation gatherings where they're going over some of the logistic aspects. They're talking about the cultural history and so forth, visas, shots, and everything that's needed there. And then we would have a specific training event just for that purpose. Now what we find with that is that regardless of what your destination is, you can all benefit from the same training, because that's going to be broad cultural applications. Whereas the specific site orientation that you need, you could have different teams meeting for those gatherings. Let me move through this slide into the next one. One of the books that we found particularly useful is a book by Tim Dearborn. And actually, some of this information is going to be in the packet that you can receive at the end of the session, some of the reference to books. But this is just an excellent resource that you see here, Short-Term Missions Workbook. Tim Dearborn is the author, and it's a great resource because it gives a very broad preparation for missions training. And if you read what he says here, of course he's probably a little bit biased in that he's written a book about preparation, so he's saying that that's the most important thing. I think there's some discussion about which of these three, whether we even need to ask the question which is the most important. I think we'd like to say that all three are equally important. What he's helping us realize is that if we don't pay attention to the preparation, to the training and orientation, then that will weaken our experience and therefore our integration of the trip. So here's Dorothy. She's arrived in Oz, and she says to the witch and to the one of the munchkins, "You're telling me to follow the yellow brick road, but my phone's navigation app found a quicker route." And I think there is something in that we're in a hurry to get to the actual mission experience. And often the training and the preparation that is required to get us there is of great importance. There is no royal road to anything, one thing at a time, all things in succession. That which grows fast withers as rapidly. That which grows slowly endures. We're not really interested in a sort of a crash course training where you just you're cramming it in. You want to create a space and time for people to reflect and to adequately prepare. Very quickly, I just want to move through possible progression. And these are old dates, so don't worry about that. I'm just using this as an example of what we did here at Trinity a few years ago. We would have an application due date. Teams would be selected out of that in a short period of time. You can see also funding is beginning to come in. And then here's this idea of having orientation gatherings as separate from a training event. And I found that to schedule the orientation gatherings before the training event, that way when people come to the training event, they're not having all of those logistical questions running through their mind. A lot of that has been already processed. And typically, at least for us, we do the training event anywhere from 1 to 2 months before the actual trip. We find that that's a pretty good timetable. These are some suggested modules that you might want to consider in a training. And again, a lot of this was I built my training model off of what I found in Dearborn. But this idea of theology of mission, a discussion of cultural values, personality types, Lessons from the Edge is something that I've developed that deals with video clips and whatnot, a creative way to try and engage on the topics. And then just some book references for you. Again, Dearborn would be my number one recommendation for teams to use for preparation. Looking at the idea of theology of mission, also by Dearborn, a very good resource, Beyond Duty. Lots of good books out there for cultural values. These are three that we've sort of incorporated. Ministering Cross-Culturally, Cross-Cultural Connections, and Foreign to Familiar. And then using personality type, that's really for your team building. And there are a lot of resources out there. You can use MBTI material. Some of these books, I believe, are also listed in the resource that you'll receive. So sorry that I'm clicking through this rather quickly. Let me just move to the next one here. This is just highlighting the different options of what you might consider, whether you want to do a series of training times over a course of a month or 2 months. We've sort of landed at the very last one, doing a 2-day split where we do a Friday evening and a Saturday. That seems to work pretty well. Well, one thing that I found as we've done trainings here, sorry, we're going to move through this. Think about what seems to be the feedback that I get as people go through the training. That I'm always a little bit surprised at, but it seems to be pretty consistent. If we look at this cartoon, I'll let you read that. So you get to the end, and obviously these folks, they've been unplugged. They've been out of the Wi-Fi system. And so this idea I like of what Jeremy there says, we were just, shudder, alone with our own thoughts. And that's what I found as we've done training, that the value of getting people unplugged in the same room, together with their thoughts, offering their reflections, concerns, hopes, stories, creating space and moments to be attentive, and preparing that team to share life together with others and for others. That seems to be the most significant thing. I get responses from teams after they've gone through the training. Well, Mike, that was the first time that we actually had the whole team together, given our busyness of life and schedule and whatnot. And so there's great value in having everybody together, being able to reflect through these things together and sharing with one another. Well, riddle me this. What always stays in a corner yet travels around the world? Anybody want to take a guess? A little bit louder. A stamp. Yes. Well, I've heard it said, make sure you have finished speaking before the audience has finished listening. So thanks for your attention. I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Michael. As you heard, I am Paul Muresan. I am Romanian born. I've been here in this country for 30 years and involved in missions to Romania for 23. Now you will try to think why Romania. I think I gave you the answer already. But my first trip to Romania, I was with a group of people, and while the group was over at the hotel, I was the provider for the food. So I was running around getting cold cuts and for sandwiches, and I was running back to the hotel with my bags filled with food. And this child came out of nowhere, and he looked at me, a gypsy child, and he said, "Can I have a loaf of bread?" And I just went right around him and made 2 steps, and then something like hit me over the head. I turned around and he was gone. And for half an hour, I looked all over and I could not find him. So I've been saying I'm going back to Romania and I'm going back throughout the world because I want to find that child. And because I did not find that child, I'm still at it. I've been in Mexico, Philippines, Kenya. And this April, I'm going to Ethiopia, and I'm very excited about it. I know a lot about missions. I have a lot of stories, but I am not an expert. I have not written any books on missions. People tell me I should write because I have incredible stories, but I just don't have time. There's one guy in Sonoma at St. Andrew Presbyterian Church in Sonoma, and he wrote a book. And he wrote his book based on our mission trips to Romania, from the preparation to the experience on the field. So I'm just here to tell you what I have done. And it's not to tell you that you have to do the same, but if something I will say sounds good or it's applicable to your ministry, I would love to hear from you. The first question is who goes. Selecting the team was the easiest thing. People would just come out of nowhere. They will say, I would like to go to Romania. And once they said they want to go, they were my friend. And we went and we had a good time. So once the team leaves, we need to challenge, as leaders, we need to challenge the people that they need to observe the presence of God into absolutely everything that's happening from that moment on. You have to also emphasize that this serving has to be done in humility. We're going to give, but no, we're receiving so much once we're there. Point to the team the multi-demands of the days ahead, and their physical demands, emotional demands, and spiritual demands. So as I track through the stories and what we do on the ground, then you will be able to qualify physical, emotional, and spiritual. Your responsibility as a leader 24/7 is to observe the team at all times. When I worried once about the team, a friend of mine just told me, just look around. They were eating and they were so loud. They were just having a good time laughing. They were integrating with other nationals and said, there's your answer, don't worry, they're fine. We need to, as leaders, we need to give attention to each member. We need to give them affirmation, and we need to show concern for their well-being. They're concerned already when they go because they're in a strange land with strange people and they feel uneasy about being there. But if they know that you're watching and you're listening, it's very important for their conviction that they are in the right place and being called to that mission. Affirmation when they get it, when they're there and you see that excitement in their hearts. Just say, you're doing well, keep going. Then show concerns. Just stop what you're doing, go alongside and ask them how they're doing. Make sure the team eats well, eat in clean restaurants, healthy food, bottled water, salads washed with clean water. That's what I learned, sometimes the hard way. Make sure you plan time of rest. Rest days and rest time during the day even. You see, sometimes passion serving goes so deep. And they're so excited about being there. I had a lady with me that was leading worship, and she was just so excited, always jumping in front of the kids in VBS and singing. But one morning she was so sick, and I said, stay. She didn't want to stay. She didn't want to stay. What I found out is that she came and she went out, to throw up before the program started. She jumped and she was so excited, and when she was done, she bailed out just to go and throw up again because she was just so sick. She could barely stand. Yet she was excited, and then she she wanted to give it all. Also provide resources for medical attention and pray at all time. We had the Nancy Heidelberg with us one time, and she was very, very sick. It just happened that we were in the hotel, and in the lobby of the hotel, I met a team member from a church in North Carolina that was in Romania with me the year before. And I told him that I have concerns. I'm looking for a car to take Nancy back to Hungary and send her back to America because she was so sick. And he said, I have a doctor with me. And then we asked permission. The doctor went up to her room, and the last thing that he packed in his luggage was exactly what Nancy needed to get well. So the next day she was up and running, and the minister was great. Let me take you through a routine day. Breakfast, do not rush the team. Okay, give them time to eat and have a good time. Then is that devotion time, which is very, very important. Couple of stories. One time we had devotion. He was in the lobby of this hotel. Right after breakfast, we were ready to go. But devotion time, we were there, and we held hands and we went around praying. And this woman, she was an elder in the church, and suddenly she started weeping. I mean, she was sobbing. And I was just freaking out, like, what's going on with her? I was so concerned. I was shaking. I could barely wait for the prayer to be over to run to her and say, what's going on? You know what she said to me? This was the first time in her life that she heard her voice praying to God. She prayed out loud the very first time in her life. 2 years ago, I had a young man who opened his heart to the team and to the Lord, and it was just an amazing, tears were there, and it was just amazing time of bonding and just lifting the Lord in our midst and affirming God's presence with us while we were doing His work there. In regards to to the work, make sure you are very well organized. Michael did a great job to say that it's important to be prepared. Make sure you maintain conditions of safety, give immediate attention to concerns and discipline when it's needed. Do not try to figure out stuff to do on the go. You need to be that organized. Again, rest, take time, break for lunch. And then when you continue, if you do work in the afternoon, make sure you provide a variety of types of work so they will not do the same thing. And match the person with the task. This is so important. I cannot tell you enough. One time I had a person that he's so outgoing. He just likes to talk to people. He talks so much. And I had him paint in the church courtyard by himself. And I mean, I looked at him and he was so sad, like, get me out of here, Get some people around me so that I can talk. But yet, then I had a coach that did VBS playground activities, and he was running around with the kids and jumping, and it was just amazing. So make sure you match the skills of the people with the task that you give them to do. It's very, very important to have evaluations right there on the mission field. First, when you do evaluations, first you need to hear from the people that you're serving, the pastor, the church, the organization you're serving with, people from that country, to make sure that you're on top, that you're exactly what, in providing the best service that they need. Do not assume anything. Do not assume that what you know is what they need. You can't do that. So, and then you have to be flexible to adapt to their expectations in the type of work that you're providing for them. Very, very important. Hear from them. Then you need to hear from the team. Make sure you hear even what they are not telling you. My wife keeps telling me that when I'm on the mission field, say, Paul, pay attention. Pay attention. Hear what you think they said to you. Okay, so that will make the energy just be there. After, when we do Vacation Bible School, we get the team together, and then we get the Romanians that are in the team also come together and we do evaluation and we do adjustments so that the next day, for the second day and third day of VBS, we're providing better services. um, Important also is to have prayer time, to have time of reflection, and that can be done in the evening, and also combine that hearing from the nationals, those who are helping you in the ministry. What we do when we go to Romania, we match one American with one Romanian, and that will be that personal translator for the whole time we're in Romania, so that you don't have this awkwardness sense of you don't know what's going on around you. You're all times you're covered, and you feel safer if you do that. Now, there's some issues, and I think it's important. I don't think I have heard of anyone leading a mission trip that there were no issues involved, that everything was so perfect, and just no, we had issues. 23 years of ministry in Romania and other places, there were plenty. And you have to address those issues immediately before it's too late. For example, people want to be selective for their assigned roommates. They have preferences, and that can be an issue. They can come late for breakfast, starting or ending the class late, or being ready for the departure of the boss. It's annoying for the rest of the team waiting for you until you finish your bags and you're ready to go. You need to listen to food preferences. I want to tell you something. After a week in Romania, the favorite restaurant of the team is McDonald's. I don't go to McDonald's, but I go with a team, and we're very excited to have Big Mac and all that good stuff. Discipline. Sometimes there are issues, and I call out the team together, and I call that spanking time. We had young people wandering off late, so we had to call that time. And I took away their passports, and I told them if they don't behave, they will stay in Romania for the rest of their lives. It's serious stuff, but it's very much needed. Alcohol, that was an issue one time, and after that first experience, we adopted. I was serving at St. Andrews at that time. We adopted strict rules as to no alcohol at all, from the moment you leave LAX until you are back on the plane coming home. And I tell you, that helped us a lot. Sometimes if you're not paying attention, the behavior of the team can be offensive to the people you're serving. And that can compromise your work. So that's why I ask you to pay very good attention to that. Now at the end, make sure you get the team together for evaluations. You get them in the same room because they're all excited about accomplishment, what the Lord has done with them. And before they leave, have a form or something that they can fill out, reflections on their time on the mission field. It's very, very important. Once they get home, and if it'll be 6 months, you will still try to get them to write to you. Present the team also with plans that you have for the following year. Every time when we're in the country, by the time we leave, we know exactly the date and the place and the projects that we'll have the following year. So very important for you to call the people, call their attention to possibly, and for that reason, having that system in, I had people committed to go even 5, 6, 7 times. They became experts into missions to Romania. And then follow up with presentations to churches, a report to their individual churches. We had a representation, the best variety in the mission. One time we had 32 individuals from 8 different denominations and 10 different churches. It was fantastic. And we were in the center of Romania. And we took the whole town over, and we had 950 children in the program. It was the most amazing experience. So I told the team, go back to your individual churches and speak about your experience here. And when you are allowing yourself to live those experiences and see how God is using you, when you go, you have no idea what you're going to do. Many times people are saying, I'm not good to go. I don't have the skills. I've never done it before. And I said, if you're breathing, we'll find a job for you. But when they come, they're so empowered by their experience. So I tell them, tell the story. Just get up and find your friends, report back to those who sponsored you to go, report back to your church, come to the summit. I mean, there's so many ways in which you can talk, and the ultimate result, the outcome from that is your life is transformed, your life is changed, and because missions is about looking away from you, as I said in the very beginning this morning, it's not about you, it's about the people that you're serving. And I tell you something, when you see how God is helping you and how God is transforming your life and the life of those around you, that keeps the witness going. And you can endure hardship. I mean, like I said, conditions are rough sometimes. You don't have the comfort, and McDonald's is very, very, very good when you come back. But this is the mission that God called us, and the Lord didn't say, I'll make sure that you have rooms at Marriott when you go away. No. Go and preach the gospel, make disciples, and tell them about Jesus. And this is always the same. You volunteer to go, you raise the money, you prepare, you take the risk of living the safety and comfort of this land to venture in a strange land with strange people and strange customs. Yet your life is changed, and the lives of those in your church are changed because of you, because of God's called on you to serve Him across the street and throughout the world. So may God bless us to do that. After the break, we're going to have a session upstairs. I mean, just a conversation. If you want to ask more questions about me or Michael, we'll be upstairs in the room there so we can talk, and maybe I can sign you up to go to Romania. Thank you.
So we have prepared a handout to accompany this session. It's called Preparing for Short-Term Mission Trips, a resource guide. It's chock full of stuff about what the Presbytery of Los Ranchos, the Presbyterian Mission Agency, and all the different bigwigs in short-term mission trips have to say. So you can take it from here, a copy from here. We have them in 2 different versions. This is personally my favorite, but it's very, very small print. So if you need reading glasses or prefer the big print, take this one. And we have about 50 copies of these. Can you hear me? Okay, 50 copies of these and maybe about 10 of these. And you can also download them from the Mission Summit blog, which address is in your welcome letter. Okay?